Just a warning, this episode contains some graphic material that listeners may find confronting.
The toy boy.
He just was the lapdog who did what he was told.
We called him the handbag.
The fuckwit.
He's a nice enough person, but he's a twit.
Oh, ouch. You've just heard what Melissa Caddick's friends and relatives think about her much younger husband, hairdresser Anthony Koletti.
And look, it's pretty easy to understand why. Anthony is demanding a huge share of the assets his wife stole from her unsuspecting clients. In fact, he just wants money however he can get it. He's even threatening legal action against the corporate regulator, which was instrumental in uncovering his wife's crimes.
I'm going to sue them for everything they've got. Look, I'd be happy with a few $1 million so that I could get on with my life and support Melissa's son. Yeah, a few $1 million would do that.
But perhaps just as offensive is Anthony's absolutely tone-deaf refusal to accept that his years of living in the lap of luxury was on the back of his wife's theft and fraud.
Melissa never gave me a cent, as I've told you before. I always paid for myself. It's not like I was some desperate double bay housewife living off my wife, which is what everyone else thinks. Why wouldn't I be entitled to something?
Now, I don't know, maybe it's because your wife is a thief and she has stolen millions of dollars from her poor family and friends, but I will leave it to 2GB Brekkie host Ben Fordham to pass judgment.
He thinks he's the biggest loser out of the scandal, more than the poor investors who trusted Melissa with their money. Oh, give us a break. This guy's living in fantasy land.
Welcome to episode 9 of Liar Liar, Melissa Caddick and the Missing Millions. I'm Tom Steinfort, a reporter with 60 Minutes.
And I'm Kate McClymont, an investigative journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald. We are delving into one of the most extraordinary crimes of the century. Melissa Caddick, a seemingly successful Sydney businesswoman, turned out to be a sociopathic con artist who stole more than $23 million from clients, mainly family and friends, who thought their funds were being invested in shares.
Within hours of her home being raided by the corporate regulator, she disappeared.
Where is she? The millionaire is accused of stealing from friends to fund her lavish lifestyle.
She hasn't been in touch with her family. She hasn't been in touch with her friends.
This was a systematic and meticulous attempt to defraud investors.
4 or 5 million? About $10 million.
You name it, Christian Dior, Chanel.
She was living off our money.
She is a survivor and she would have had a plan.
Nothing would surprise any of us.
You know how much we love you. You just come home, everything's taken care of, you're not in trouble.
Hi, it's Melissa Caddick.
Koletti has endured so much unwelcome scrutiny since his wife's sudden disappearance. It's left him in a state of, shock and confusion. And that expression, a deer in the headlights, seems pretty apt for him.
But the reason he's so central to this story is that, despite his repeated denials, Anthony enjoyed 8 years living the high life, courtesy of his wife's Ponzi scheme. And apart from zipping down the Aspen slopes with the family and drinking cocktails under the palm trees on private islands in Fiji, every aspect of Anthony's life was quite over the top. There was the luxury Audi R8, a whopping $400,000 worth, if you don't mind.
And of course, there's his treasure trove of bling, including his $18,000 diamond dress ring.
I mean, he's got one pair of cufflinks alone that are worth $8,000.
And then there's the skull pendant with the black sapphires and diamonds, a snip at $6,300.
I think we've already mentioned previously in the series his Breitling watch, that's $11,000 worth there.
And don't forget that lovely sapphire and diamond cross for $8,000.
Now, beyond all of that excess, the other reason that Anthony is central to this story, of course, is his baffling delay, taking 30 hours to report his wife's disappearance to police. And Kate, for clarity, we did ask Anthony if he'd talk to us on the podcast.
Yes, we emailed him, called him, texted him, and I ended up approaching him one day at court and I asked if he would speak to us for the podcast. Now, without even looking up from his phone, he said in a deadpan tone, "Why would I want to do that?"
Well, maybe he would want to do it, Kate, if we stumped up some cash. Koletti had an agent working on his behalf, shopping his story around for money. And, well, he does have quite an intriguing story, I guess, and there is definitely a lot to unpack here. So let's get cracking, Kate.
The marital mansion where Anthony and Melissa were living in Dover Heights is a very different setting to where Anthony grew up. And like Melissa, he had a comfortable but pretty unremarkable upbringing in Riverwood in suburban Sydney. It's only about 3 kilometres up the road from Melissa.
Now, how's this for a coincidence? Anthony and Melissa share the same birth date, April 21, and they went to the same high school, although when Melissa started at that high school, Anthony was still in nappies.
And as we know, the pair met when Anthony was working as a hairdresser at Joe Bailey's upmarket salon in Westfield, Bondi Junction. Now, in a paid interview with Channel 7 Spotlight program, Anthony explained how they met.
We met at the hairdressers where I worked. Yeah, I think instantly we just sort of felt a connection.
And soon it was a lot more than just a connection. The married Melissa and her young hairdresser embarked on a passionate affair.
The exact nature of their relationship raised eyebrows among a few in Melissa's circle. Here's what one friend told us about Melissa arriving in New York, supposedly on a business trip with Anthony in tow.
She's taking her hairdresser? Who takes their fucking personal hairdresser with her on a business trip?
As we mentioned in an earlier episode, Melissa was living in the UK with her English-born husband, Tony Caddick. Now, in early 2012, Melissa was sprung when she was spotted canoodling in a Paris cafe with another man. That was Anthony number 2, her Sydney hairdresser, Anthony Koletti.
After being confronted with her infidelity, Melissa hightailed it back to Sydney in January 2012.
And that is when her lies really started to hit some new heights. She claimed her former husband was controlling and abusive, but then went on to say how lucky she was to arrive back in Sydney to stumble upon this man, Anthony Koletti, who helped her find love again.
When she ran into her friend Bronwyn Brady, whom she'd met at Baby Group back in 2006, this is the lie Melissa spun.
I divorced my first husband. I had a terrible time in the United Kingdom. You know, he was really nasty to me. He was controlling. He told me all these lies.
And then Anthony supposedly entered the scene.
And so now we're back here. I've rebuilt my life and I've married Anthony. And then she told me that she'd met Anthony at the gym. She said, I met him at the gym and we just started dating. And I said, well, good on you. That's great as long as you're happy.
It's striking that Melissa complained to her friends and family that her first husband, Tony, was a controlling narcissist who cheated on her. And wait for this, that he was the scammer who had pretended he had a job with Lloyd's of London.
I mean, talk about flipping the narrative 180 degrees to portray yourself as the victim. I mean, in one of her straight-out lies, Melissa told people she had sprung Tony in a coffee shop with another woman, and that Anthony number 2 was the hero who had come to her rescue.
The loved-up couple wasted no time. Melissa's divorce hadn't even come through when Anthony proposed to her in 2012.
As we've previously explained, the pair then married on New Year's Eve in 2013.
We had a bit of a New Year's Eve party and we didn't want to tell anyone, make a big deal about it all, and then it turned into a wedding and it was lovely. She was just, she was so happy to get married.
What Anthony didn't know was that the entire wedding had been paid for with stolen funds. You know, the champagne, Melissa's 3 changes of designer outfits, including her full-length wedding dress designed by Gucci.
Interesting you mentioned that Gucci dress, Kate, because it clearly has some sentimental value for Anthony. He has complained that investigators paraded it in front of Melissa at the raid. Koletti is now demanding that the Gucci wedding dress be returned to him. Not only that, he also wants the $34,000 engagement ring and Melissa's $26,000 wedding band, which he claims he paid for all out of his own money.
And as we have previously mentioned, the very next day the newlyweds and Melissa's then 9-year-old son jetted off to ski in Aspen. Then they spent a week in the Big Apple, New York.
Their friend Alice said Melissa took pride in having this younger man on her arm.
I do recall her telling me a story once that when they were on a flight to the US, as they boarded to go into business class, somebody said, "Oh, you're travelling with your sons." And she then grabbed Anthony, gave him a big kiss and said, "No, my husband."
That's quite interesting because one investor told me that the first time he met Anthony, he thought he was Melissa's son.
Anyway, so it continued year in, year out. Anthony enjoying the lavish lifestyle that Melissa provided, the flash cars that he loved so much, their beautiful house, and of course Melissa splashing out about $500,000 every single year on those outlandish overseas trips.
He certainly boasted about his 5-star lifestyle that Melissa was showering on him. Here's what one of his hairdressing clients told us.
He never ever shut up. He just kept going and going and talking and talking and talking. And they had this really extravagant life. And I was thinking, well, snobbily, very snobbily, you're a freaking hairdresser. How come you're in Aspen doing this and that? I remember just being blown away by the lifestyle, the extravagant lifestyle, and thinking, how on earth did you pay for that? And then further down the track, he told me that his wife was in finance. And I thought, well, I bet you she's some big banker wanker, and that's how they can afford it all. So when I saw it on the news, I thought, well, oh my God, that makes sense.
That client said Anthony only worked a couple of days a week as a hairdresser because he said he was busy producing music in a downstairs studio in his home.
All right, well, let's get to Anthony's passions. And I guess top of that list is Melissa herself.
Melissa and I were very close. We both adored each other. Just someone that made me feel complete. Still to this point cry every day. It's a love story of, two people that made each other happy, that loved each other very much. And the loss is incredible.
That was Anthony Koletti in his interview with Channel 7 in late 2021, for which, Tom, he received $50,000.
But Melissa isn't Anthony's only passion. He has plenty of other loves, including, well, of course, the high-powered sports cars, also rollerblading or inline skating, as well as his ambitions to be an international DJ or music producer. He actually has his own production company called Paws Off, spelt as in dog paws.
Tom, his previous company also had a very unusual title, AK-47 Proprietary Limited. He seems chuffed that his initials AK are short for a Kalashnikov assault rifle. And he even has a tattoo of an AK-47 weapon on his right shoulder.
And he's even been known to refer to himself in the third person as AK. But let's get back to his music, and an interview in 2016 with a fledgling music blog, well, that sheds some more light on how Anthony came upon his new professional name.
Please welcome my special guest, Anthony Koletti, aka Paws Off. How did you get the name Paws Off as your artist name?
Well, you can't listen to music with paws on.
He thought this was such a clever play on words that the number plates on his beloved Audi were 2 paws. And he also released his own line of Paws Off merch.
Returning it to that interview, and Anthony was also asked about the most rewarding part of being a musician.
It's seeing anyone tapping their feet and nodding their heads when appreciating my craft.
When asked how old he was when he knew that he wanted to become an artist, he told the interviewer he'd been
a creative artist of some sort my whole life. The first memory I have of creativity came at a very young age. I was 9 years old and The Simpsons had just come out. What a catchy tune, I recall thinking.
Anthony signed off his interview with this.
2016 is set to be an explosive year for Pause Off. A remix album of my greatest hits, also a follow-up album are already in the pipeline. Stay tuned for an abundance of uplifting audio fuel.
Greatest hits. There you go. Anthony was keen to make it all the way to the top in the music industry, and it certainly wasn't through any lack of trying that he, hasn't quite got there yet.
You should turn your body cam off so we don't get in trouble.
Cheating on a federal police exam isn't that bad. Think of all the things I could buy with the extra money.
Don't take my word for it.
That was a track from his latest album, The Raid, the cover art of which features a pair of Asics shoes being dangled by the laces with a stunning view of Sydney Harbour in the background.
Now, you might remember we gave a bit of a taste of that album in a previous episode, which of course included that very admirable effort to find something that rhymes with Anthony's surname.
You to talk. You don't need to be here, Mr. Koletti. Just leave and we'll turn your wife's head into spaghetti.
Koletti's been trying to crack it as a DJ for the better part of a decade. In his mid-30s, he entered the youth radio station Triple J's new artist competition, Unearthed. Unfortunately, his work didn't get a lot of traction there. His entry received only one review on the website. Now look, that was a 5-star rating, but Kate, the review came from a user called Pause Off, and I think we can take a fair guess at who that was.
Oh no, that's quite sad. You know, Tom, the amount of time Anthony put into promoting his music career was perhaps only eclipsed by the amount of money his wife Melissa was pumping into it.
If I was made for this, why isn't it happening?
Tom, we're having a look at the film clip for Pause Off, and this song is called Infatuated. As one music blog commented,
No, that's not a typo, that's what the song is in fact called. It's all about the passion to get infatuated, Pause Off told us, which doesn't really help us to differentiate between being infatuated and infatuated.
In fact, you've heard Anthony's interpretation of infatuated, but this is how Urban Dictionary defines it. When a person is obsessed about being right or looking smart to the point where they will make up any fact, no matter how delusional or far-fetched it seems.
Wow, was this some sort of coded love song to Melissa that we didn't even pick up on at the time? Who knows? Anyway, enough about the name, Kate. I am just glued to this video clip. To paint a picture for listeners, it features the vocalists kind of writhing around some sort of workshop, interspersed with none other than Anthony Koletti, brandishing a set of headphones and a very serious expression, tinkering with his DJ equipment. Now, as someone who works in television myself, I can tell you this is actually a pretty high-end production. I'd imagine we're talking well into a 5-figure bill for filming and editing all of this. And with all due respect to Anthony, by his own admission here, his music makes, well, pretty much no money at all. So it's safe to assume that his wife, or more specifically, her unfortunate investors, were the ones that were footing the bill for all of this. Although Anthony didn't know that at the time.
It's what Koletti did or didn't do after their house was raided by authorities on that fateful day, 11th of November 2020, that later caused so much speculation.
Melissa disappeared at 5:30 the next morning. She leaves without her phone, without her wallet or her keys, and yet her husband takes another day and a half to eventually tell police that she had gone missing.
He also made no effort to call her family or her friends to ask if they'd seen Melissa.
Her own brother, Adam, didn't find out until about the same time as police that his much-loved sister was missing. Here's what Adam told his friend Alice about that.
Well, he told me that, Anthony, the fuckwit, had not told anyone that she had been missing for more than 24 hours.
And then 8 days later, Koletti fronts that press conference outside Bondi Police Station alongside Melissa's brother Adam.
Yeah, that's where Anthony made those strange comments that they went to bed as normal. And also, this.
You know how much we love you. You just come home, everything's taken care of, you're not in trouble.
You're not in trouble? Tom, your house has just been raided, all your prized possessions have been seized. I mean, really, quite clearly, Melissa was in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Kate, but if my house was raided because of my spouse's apparent criminal business dealings, the second they left the property, I'd be asking her, what the hell was all that about? But nope, not Anthony Koletti. Despite having endured one of the most traumatic days of their lives, Anthony freely admits he didn't ask Melissa a thing about why the police were there and why they were taking away all her stuff.
In his interview with Channel 7 Spotlight program 11 months after his wife's disappearance, Koletti's account of what happened in the hours after the raid only raised more questions.
I couldn't ask her a thing. She was just absolutely shell-shocked. She went straight to sleep. I was up I went to sleep at 4 a.m. I held her. I just felt that I had to console her. So we just cuddled and spooned as usual.
Did you talk at all, or was she fast asleep?
She was fast asleep, and then I, nodded off not long after.
Not one question. Darling, what is going on here?
No.
Is it true?
No.
Have you been stealing?
That. No. Didn't even ask her that.
Have you been committing fraud?
No. Didn't even ask her that.
Is our life based on a lie?
No. There was none of that.
You're going to have to help me with that thinking because it's really hard to understand.
Yep.
It doesn't match, dare I say it, other people's normal thinking that after such a traumatic event like that,
yep,
your lives being turned upside down, your wife accused of fraud, deceit, theft,
yep,
that you don't ask a single question.
Didn't believe it. I still don't. A year later, after what I've seen and learnt, a year later, I still don't believe it.
All right, so the morning of Melissa's disappearance, Koletti sends her a text message at 7:16 a.m. saying,
"You okay? Have you got your key?"
He doesn't get a reply, and he soon realises her phone is still at home on the charger and her keys and wallet are all where she left them. Now, as we now know, Anthony would never see Melissa again.
But as we've mentioned, Anthony didn't report her missing to police for at least another 30 hours, maybe even more than that. He would later explain that he thought you had to wait 24 hours before you could actually report someone missing to police.
Yes, he said he thought Melissa was off somewhere trying to fix up the mess.
I just thought that she'd be trying her best to make everything right. By 30 hours, I was extremely worried.
So while the rest of the country was busy attributing sinister motives for Koletti's delay, family and friends, well, they offered a pretty different and quite interesting explanation as to why he might have taken so long to raise the alarm.
And Tom, that explanation was that Melissa was so controlling in their relationship that Anthony was afraid of doing the wrong thing, so he did nothing.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. When you speak to Melissa and Anthony's longtime friends, they paint a pretty consistent and vivid picture. Melissa didn't just control the finances, she called the shots on everything, and Anthony just did as he was told.
And look, as we mentioned earlier, their family and friends had a couple of unkind nicknames for Anthony.
We called him the handbag.
Just like a little toy boy.
He just did what he was told.
So what was the dynamic of their relationship?
She was the boss.
Cheryl Kraft-Reid and her wife Faye, they trusted Melissa to invest their entire nest egg. And by now, it won't surprise you to learn that Melissa blew the lot on her and Anthony's lives of luxury. Cheryl has very clear recollections of the power dynamic between the two of them.
She was the money spinner. She was more dominant out of the relationship.
She wore the pants.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Oh, she was dominant. You know, she was incredibly dominant in that relationship. And I adhered to the point where I think just was the lapdog who did what he was told. And I think he lived in fear of upsetting her, of not making right decisions.
And as her friend Kate Horn told us,
Melissa wanted someone who was malleable, but what she got was Play-Doh.
The $23 million question is whether Anthony had any idea that his wife was a rolled gold con artist. His father, Rhodo Koletti, an accountant, doesn't think so.
Anthony's a hairdresser, a damn good hairdresser, but I don't believe he has the capacity to know what a financial scheme is. I don't think he could have been in it at all or known what was going on. But having said that, he would believe anything Melissa tells him. I'm quite confident of that. Even if he didn't know what was going on, he would believe everything he was told.
When I interviewed Rhodo for 60 Minutes back in 2020, fair to say he wasn't a huge fan of his daughter-in-law. Tell me more about your first impressions of Melissa when you met her, because obviously your gut was telling you something doesn't add up here.
Well, it was basically, this is going to be my son's wife, and I will respect her as such. Doesn't mean I had to trust her, but I would respect her as such because she was going to be his wife. And that's all there is to it.
Okay, so you respect her, but why didn't you trust her?
I've been an accountant for a lot of years, and the Q&A with her left me a little suspicious.
Was that because you didn't trust her?
Absolutely. Probably shouldn't say that, but yes, I did. I really did not feel that she was truthful enough with me when we initially met and were having conversations about, because financial things are things we would talk about. Like I would know, I'd have enough knowledge in that area to be able to carry on a conversation with somebody about it. And the information she was giving me just didn't sort of pan out to me, so there's no way in the world I would ever have trusted her to invest my money with her. No way at all.
Rhodo wasn't very thrilled when we showed him that he too had been scammed by Melissa. Thankfully for him, it wasn't financially, but instead she had forged her father-in-law's signature because he's a justice of the peace. So she'd been copying his signature to try and legitimise some of her own fraudulent financial dealings.
Oh boy, that's a pretty brutal thing to find out. I think it'll come as no surprise to listeners that the longer Anthony's marriage to Melissa went on, the more he and his family drifted apart.
Yeah, we've confirmed that Anthony has now cut off all contact with his family, including his cousins, his aunts and his uncles. But there is one person that Anthony has stayed totally devoted to, and that's his stepson, who still lives with him. In a submission to the federal court, Anthony said, "As soon as Melissa is officially declared dead and the court allows me to do so, I will become full-time guardian as per Melissa's request in her last will." However, court documents show that the boy's biological father, Anthony Caddick, disputes this. He said that while Koletti was the boy's stepfather, he had no other legal rights, and he doubted, quote, Mr. Koletti has any idea what he's doing.
Anthony has had a lot going on in court over the last couple of years. After Melissa disappeared, Koletti declared he had only $1.95 to his name, and he went cap in hand to the court, asking them to show him and his teenage stepson some sympathy. This is what he told the court a month after his wife vanished.
I was employed on a part-time basis as a hairdresser until the COVID-19 lockdown commenced in late March 2020.
Koletti also said that as his wife was the primary breadwinner, it was decided that he would quit work altogether and take care of home duties and look after his stepson.
As a result, I do not earn an income. My living expenses and those of our Dover Heights household are paid for by Melissa Caddick.
So Anthony needed to convince the court to unfreeze Melissa's purse strings so that he could maintain his lifestyle. Initially, he was given an allowance of $800 a week for him and his stepson to live on. Now, that probably seems reasonable to anyone on the average wage, but for Anthony, used to the high life that Melissa's Ponzi scheme had afforded him, this was very much a shock to the system.
But as you will hear in a minute, this was in fact a pay rise from the last time he worked as a part-time hairdresser. Anyway, so rather than accept the initial $800 a week allowance that had been allocated to Anthony and Melissa's son, Anthony wanted it bumped up to $20,922 a month.
20 grand a month. And Kate, we've got to keep in mind here, that figure doesn't even include the extra $19,000 a month that were required for mortgage repayments.
Now, Melissa's victims who'd lost everything, they were livid to see the breakdown of what Anthony apparently deemed life's necessities.
Yeah, some of these essentials just jump off the page. $60 a week for cigarettes.
$80 a week for pet food.
$500 a week for the grocery shopping.
And as you said, Tom, this led to early accusations from victims that Anthony was basically delusional, insensitive, and, you know what, pretty disrespectful.
In the end, Anthony and his stepson were granted $1,700 a week, but February 2021 was a pretty brutal one for Koletti. The court stopped all payments, and then a few days later, his wife's partial remains were found on a remote beach.
Now, rather than bring closure, all this has done is to fuel Koletti's rage at everyone except Melissa.
Yeah, but he's adamant that no one has been more hard done by than himself. And his fury, it only seems to be getting stronger by the day.
Yes, but Anthony is adamant he is just misunderstood, with the belief no one has been more hard done by than him.
Yeah, he really has turned his attention to blaming everyone else for his current misfortune. Sorry, when I say everyone else, I mean everyone except his wife.
Oh, exactly. And since his wife's disappearance, Koletti has been waging a campaign against the corporate regulator ASIC, as well as the officer in charge of the case, Isabella Allen.
Your Honour, the reason Melissa is deceased and you don't have a defendant is because of Isabella Allen's severe negligence and inhumane treatment towards Melissa. Whether Melissa committed suicide or was murdered, Melissa was dehumanised in front of her son and I, whilst the AFP were upstairs enjoying our view and having a merry old time.
That was an actor reading part of the extraordinary email Koletti sent to the judge, who's already ruled his wife was running a major fraud, and that very same judge is now presiding over the sale of Melissa's assets so that money can be returned to her victims.
On the anniversary of Melissa's disappearance, Anthony Koletti turned up outside the city headquarters of the corporate regulator ASIC. He was armed with sticky tape and some A3 paper.
That A3 paper was actually a poster he'd made, and it said ASIC equals woman slaughter.
On his LinkedIn page, Koletti posted a barrage of unfounded accusations suggesting that ASIC was responsible for the death of his wife.
An investigator at your company and her team of white-collar crooks caused the death of my wife. Maybe I should sue ASIC for negligent manslaughter.
In another, he accused ASIC of, quote, removing proof of her disappearance and also of hindering the police investigation. He has since taken down all these comments.
Koletti's rage also provided the creative spark for the aforementioned album called The Raid, in which he continued to make just outrageous accusations against ASIC and Isabella Allen, the lead investigator in the case against his wife.
Here is a reminder.
No food, no water, just a young girl trying to climb the corporate ladder that tortured a lady for 14 hours.
Oh, I love my 9 to 5. Stuff goes missing all the time. Up my nose and in my blouse. Where it goes, nobody knows.
But anyway, it got so bad that the police applied for an apprehended violence order against Koletti on Isabella Allen's behalf.
Now, it's worth noting that Anthony is contesting that application and it hasn't been heard in court at the time of us recording this.
In February, he contacted the judge. Now, this is the same judge who's already ruled his wife was criminally ripping off her victims. This is a bit of his email rantings to Justice Bridget Markovich.
In an attempt to defame my character before Your Honour, one day before your court date on the 24th of February, Isabella Allen has sought an AVO against me. The last time I saw her was a year ago when she called me into her office to interview me.
Koletti also accused Isabella Allen of laughing at him when he came into her office and vindictively giving him a copy of his wife's will.
I sent her 4 text messages 8 months ago. Isabella Allen called the police and told them I was threatening her. The police warned me not to contact her, and I have not contacted her since. I wrote music which mentioned my experiences throughout the raid, and I feel that Isabella Allen is trying to silence my freedom of speech by getting this AVO, as well as take away yet another source of income, including my main source of income, hairdressing, in a public forum, which is no longer possible due to the unnecessary media attention I have faced.
By the way, after listening to Anthony's musical efforts in his Spotlight interview in October 2021, Kate Horn, his wife's first victim, sent the following text to Koletti.
Hi Anthony, it was lovely seeing you on the TV on Sunday. You look well. I'm not sure if you were aware, but almost a year ago, my family and I lost our life savings and superannuation. It has been very painful. The most painful of all is watching our mum go through this. As you claim to be financially independent, I was wondering if you might consider donating your earnings from the interview to her. It would be greatly appreciated. I know Melissa would expect nothing less from you, as she loved us so much. Please let me know what you think. I would gladly forward Mum's bank account details to you. Kind regards, Kate Horn.
This is Anthony's response, as read by an actor.
Good morning, Kate. I made an album of exactly what happened on the day of the raid. All proceeds are going to people who lost money in this tragedy, not including myself. I will get your mum's bank details in due course. Anthony.
And did Kate Horn or her mother get any money?
Well, I haven't received anything yet, and I'm not holding my breath.
Since then, though, Koletti has got on the front foot. He is adamant he doesn't know anyone, anything. This is what he told the Australian newspaper, as read by an actor.
I personally have not spent a cent of investors' money, and that cannot be shown. So why is it my fault? Why am I losing everything? Why am I the villain?
Now, it's not just ASIC that's on the receiving end of Koletti's accusations. He's also been firing off very angry emails to Bruce Gleeson, the liquidator from Jones Partners, whose job it is to identify and sell Caddick's assets and return any proceeds to her victims.
Your client's whole case is based on lies. What your clients claimed to happen in regards to Melissa spending investor funds did not happen.
That's what Koletti wrote in an email to Michael Hayter, the solicitor acting for the liquidators. And here's another serve he gave to Hayter in November 2021.
Given the childlike and bullying nature your lawyer, Mr. Hayter, has shown, I now see it as straight-out harassment. I do not feel comfortable having your firm in my home. Given all of the above, I refuse any further inspections on the property. I'm sorry. It has to be this way. Regards, Anthony Koletti.
You can tell from that last email it's been quite an effort to get Koletti out of Dover Heights. In a report from Jones Partners to out-of-pocket investors, they said Koletti was once again asking for money.
At various times, Mr. Koletti has sought payment from us as receivers in relation to vacating the Dover Heights property, and we have refused to make any payments to Mr. Koletti to date.
In May 2022, Koletti, who'd been living in Dover Heights rent-free for the last 18 months, finally left. He went to a 2-bedroom flat in Bondi. Now, Tom, eagle-eyed interior decorators who watched Koletti showing Channel 7 around his new abode noted that he was still clinging on to the vestiges of his former luxury lifestyle. The new digs were decked out with the $14,000 pea green Vitra Polder sofa and a $20,000 dining room table and chairs, both from Dover Heights.
And Kate, on his way out of Willangara Road, Anthony whacked a stunning claim for the proceeds from the sale of that very house, which he, I've got to say, very ambitiously claimed was valued between $15 and $17 million.
Not only that, he wants her Gucci wedding dress, $7 million in shares, $2 million worth of jewellery, and the proceeds from the sale of their luxury cars, which fetched almost $300,000 when they went to auction.
It's always nice to dream big, isn't it?
Oh,
Look,
it is.
To support this claim that all of his money went to supporting his wife and his stepson, Anthony filed some incomplete bank records from his company, Pawsoff Productions.
Remember when his wife first went missing, Anthony told liquidators that Pawsoff made no income and had no assets. He also said his living expenses and all their household costs were paid for by Melissa. He told the court he had only one account, the one with the $1.95 in it. Now, maybe he was just being precise and meant only one personal account, because now we learn there is also a business account.
Yeah, and the records for that account date from April 2017 to March 2020. And Kate, they're absolutely riveting, but perhaps not in the way that Anthony Koletti had intended. He was getting around $600 to $800 a week from Joe Bailey, the hair salon that he worked at. But much more fascinating were the huge amounts of cash that were being deposited into his account. They were coming from a mysterious but very generous benefactor.
And I know this is what's interesting, because at the end of most months, Anthony's basically broke. Like, let's see, end of June 2019, he has 75 cents in his account. And end of July 2018, there's 40 cents.
Yeah, end of April 2020, he has literally zero in his bank account. But each time he's completely broke, a miracle happens. A few days later, a whopping cash deposit is made into his account. Now, these cash deposits are thousands and thousands of dollars.
And then as soon as the cash comes in, something really peculiar happens. Anthony goes round to various hotels and then withdraws the money. And he withdraws them in 3 $500 lots. And Tom pays withdrawal fees for the pleasure of doing that.
Yeah, and his favourite place to pull out cash was the Tea Gardens Hotel in Bondi Junction, and that's only a short walk from his longtime workplace at Joe Bailey's hair salon. Another couple of regular haunts were the Rose Bay Hotel and the Golden Sheaf Hotel, both just a quick drive from the Dover Heights mansion.
So take this example. One day in April 2017, $1,600 cash goes into his account. He's then off to the Empire Hotel in Annandale, where he makes 3 lots of cash withdrawals, each of $500.
In early May 2017, $5,000 cash comes in. And, well, let's look what happens here. Friday, 12th of May 2017, he's at a hotel in Crow's Nest, making 3 $500 withdrawals plus the fees.
And then on Tuesday, the 16th of May, he's at the Eastern Hotel, Bondi Junction, withdrawing 2 lots of $500 again.
And the very next day, he's at the Tea Gardens Hotel in Bondi Junction, making 2 $500 withdrawals. And so, pretty quickly, all that money's gone.
But Tom, what the hell is he doing? I mean, these hotels range from the entrance on the Central Coast to Rose Bay, Annandale, Sylvania, Crow's Nest, Watson's Bay, and Bondi Junction, where, as you said, is where he works as a part-time hairdresser.
And if you're not from Sydney, these places are all over the city and beyond. But what's important here is that Anthony's bank records show $54,000 in cash deposits and transfers from an unknown account went into his bank. And so the big question here is, who is giving him all this money?
Throughout our relationship, I gave the majority of my income from hairdressing to Melissa for the purpose of paying for the financing of the R8. I've enclosed a copy of my business bank account statement which has been highlighted in places to identify cash withdrawals, which were given to Melissa for this purpose.
Anthony also said this in a recent interview.
Melissa never gave me a cent, as I've told you before. I always paid for myself. It's not like I was some desperate double bay housewife living off my wife, which is what everyone else thinks. Why wouldn't I be entitled to something?
Okay, so he's told the court his income has paid for the car, that Audi R8, but he doesn't specify where he's getting all these cash payments from.
And if it is perhaps Melissa giving him this money, why does he then need to withdraw it through ATMs at pubs to maybe give it back to her?
I know, it just doesn't make sense, but his nemesis Michael Hayter replied rather curtly that Koletti's claims about having contributed to any of the trappings of their luxury lifestyle was nonsense.
The bank statements provide no assistance in showing that you made any direct contributions to purchase any of the receivership assets.
And Hayter didn't mince his words when he added,
Our client's position is that the factual matters that you have put in relation to the vehicle are untrue.
The lawyer then said they had traced the money for the $390,000 sports car and established without a doubt that Melissa had used stolen money to buy it.
Michael Hayter also pointed out, as we mentioned earlier, that there was some dubious tax accounting going on because Melissa was paying management fees to Paws Off Productions, which, as Koletti had previously told them, had provided no services whatsoever. And this led to a strongly worded warning to Koletti.
At some stage, there is going to need to be a reconciliation of not only the payments you assert you have paid for the benefit of Melissa Louise Caddick, but also the payments that you have received the benefit of. The benefit you have received appears to far outweigh the cash withdrawals you have highlighted.
Some other items in those statements jump out at me as well, Kate. I'm sure they caught your eye too. Pretty intriguing. This Anthony's new money-making venture, breeding prawns in the aquarium he set up at the house.
Yes, Tom, it didn't escape my notice that in Anthony's rather bizarre bank statements, there were some payments for slippery little suckers, as well as the wonderfully named aquaholics. Now, I looked up Slippery Little Suckers, which claims to be an award-winning boutique fish and aquarium supplier in Kingsford.
That's why you win the Walkleys, Kate. Yes, Anthony Koletti is mourning the love of his life, and he's clearly also tortured by the mess that Melissa Caddick has left behind. But it really is still very hard to let all of that justify a lot of his subsequent actions. He is just completely in denial and appears so tone-deaf to the suffering of Melissa's victims. I mean, the conclusion you come to at the end of it all is that, well, clearly, love is blind.
The pathos of Anthony Koletti really hit home for me when I heard about the Christmas lunch of 2020. Now, you'll recall in an earlier episode we mentioned that Melissa was planning a big Christmas lunch at her house before she disappeared. Now, the Grimley family ended up hosting, but Anthony Koletti was absent. And Tom, he waited at their Wallangra Road home that entire Christmas day because he was convinced Melissa was going to walk through that door.
In the next episode, we'll be wrapping up this extraordinary tale for the time being, looking at what has happened to those who provided Melissa with professional advice and hearing for the first time from one of her most tragic victims.
Well, it's there all the time. It's sitting at the back of my mind every minute. Everything you do, you think, oh, can I be affording this? Or should I be doing this? It's there all the time.
If you have found any of the content of today's episode troubling, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.
Liar Liar is a co-production of the Sydney Morning Herald and 60 Minutes.
It was written and presented by Kate McClymont and Tom Steinfort.
Michael Evans is the Sydney Morning Herald's investigations editor and the series' supervising producer.
This episode was produced and edited by David McMillan with Tracy Hannaford for 60 Minutes.
Kirsty Thompson is the executive producer of 60 Minutes.
For more of Australia's best investigative journalism, subscribe to the Sydney Morning Herald by visiting smh.com.au and watch 60 Minutes on 9 or 9 Now every Sunday.
If you know more about Melissa Caddick's disappearance, please contact the team by emailing liarliarpodcast@smh.com.au.
A portion of Anthony Koletti's audio in this episode is from Spotlight, The Vanishing, and is used courtesy of the 7 Network.
Some names and voices have been changed in this series to protect the identity of victims.